What is going on, everybody, in Wrestling Review Society's Facebook page, YouTube page, Real Pro Wrestling's YouTube page, Generational Wrestling Society, WCW Nation, and twitch.tv/HeelKevin. Guys, I know I've been posting all week that today was going to be a doubleheader, and we were going to have two special interviews for you. One being the current NWA champion, or NWA television champion, the Pope. Unfortunately, they are doing TV tapings today, and the time slots just did not match up. We thought we were going to be able to make it work. We were not able to. The interview has been rescheduled, so that is coming in the very near future. But, guys, that aside, I just wanted to give you guys a quick explanation. That aside, we have an absolutely outstanding interview for you guys tonight. It is going to be a no-holds-barred interview. This man has given me permission to ask any question. You guys can ask all your questions in the comments, and we're going to get to them. There's no time limit on this one, guys. There's no rules. This is uncharted waters. There's no rules here. This guy is absolutely awesome. He's given us permission to go as long as we need and talk about whatever we need. But before we get into that, I have to take a second to thank our amazing sponsors who make this show happen each and every time I turn this camera on. First of which, if you see on our display shelf, we have the Coldest Water. Guys, the people at the Coldest Water, they make the best water bottles I have ever had in my entire life. I have it, my wife has it, my mom has it, and now with their new release of their Pet Bowl line, my dog has it. Guys, if you want to get your hands on any of their amazing products like their water bottles, pet bowls, t-shirts, or even their brand new coffee line, go to thecoldestwater.com and use promo code WRESTLING to save 10% at checkout. That is promo code WRESTLING to save 10% at checkout. Also, guys, thefirstwarrior.com. First is spelled with a 1, not an I. Thefirstwarrior.com is a patriotic clothing company. They make hats and shirts as of right now, but they are working to get you guys new and different kinds of garments each and every day, like sweatpants and shorts and stuff like that. If you want to get any of their products, make sure you go to thefirstwarrior.com and use promo code WRS to save 10% at checkout. And lastly, guys, if you're watching on any other platform than our Twitch channel, I advise you to go ahead and switch to Twitch at twitch.tv/HeelKevin, because there's going to be some Twitch exclusive content at the end of this interview, and only the Twitch viewers are going to get it. So if you're not on Twitch, you might want to go and jump over to Twitch and follow twitch.tv/HeelKevin. But guys, that is enough about me. As most of you know, throughout my social media, I attended a Riot Pro Wrestling show in Orlando, Florida this past weekend. And to say it was interesting is a drastic understatement. One of the guys there that I got to meet, I talked so much shit to. I mean, I was so close to I talked so much crap to this guy, and he's like the nicest guy I've ever met. But with that being said, guys, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get him on here. I want to start getting the questions going. He's got some amazing stories, and I can't wait to dive into them. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming the son of WWE Hall of Famer Larry Zbyszko, the living legacy himself, Tim the Ripper Zbyszko. Tim, what's up, buddy?
Hey, thank you for the great introduction. Yeah, it was nice seeing you in the crowd there. You're quite vocal. You are quite a vocal fan, which I appreciate. I appreciate. And don't kill my heat. I'm not too nice. Don't worry, everybody. I have my moments.
No, it's a light switch effect. When the lights are on and the camera's rolling, don't get in his way. But talking to him after the show, I knew we had to make this happen. And you actually approached. I was nervous to even talk to you for a little bit, and he just, hey man, got to get me on the show, and here we are. Less than a week later, here we are.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. You know, the Riot show is absolutely amazing. I love the atmosphere you guys got going on down there. And, I knew going into it, it was a smaller crowd. I wasn't sure how it was going to play out, but I knew I wanted to be loud. I wanted to be vocal. And if I was the only one, I was going to make sure you heard me. But luckily, you guys had a live crowd. They were in the palm of your – whether you were heel or face. We were even going after the referees. Like, is that the kind of atmosphere you enjoy or
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think the best thing about live wrestling is the crowd's energy and their feedback. And when you get the crowd going, everybody gets hot, and the emotions get riled up, and when you can get people to forget that they are at a wrestling show because they're so involved in the show. They're enjoying the match, they're following the story, they're getting behind one of the wrestlers in the fight. And that's the absolute best part. So I feed off it in those smaller venues where Riot's doing like a TV taping kind of setup in a smaller studio kind of thing. You get a nice reverb, and it's intimate. So you can really, if you go to a show and 20,000 people are there, that's great too, but it's not nearly as intimate unless you're like in the front row and you have an interaction. At a small show like that, every single fan and guest and whatever can get a part of it. They can get a taste of the show from from me letting them know how much I dislike them, or from some sucker in the back coming out.
You weren't afraid to do that.
No, I don't waste my time. I don't know anybody. People pretend like all these wrestlers are like they're all my best friends. Like, no, I don't fake it for me. I don't know any of you guys, so I don't pretend to care.
Just talking about Riot Pro Wrestling, and we're going to get into more of that stuff. But speaking of Riot, we have a comment coming in from the Riot Heavyweight Champion. News broke today on the Riot page that the decision was reversed, and still your champion, Zach Taylor, a.k.a. Zach Monstar, leaving a comment saying that Tim is the shit. I would definitely have to agree after getting to know him these past couple of days.
Thank you. Yeah, Monstar is he's a funny too. He's a very terrifying individual, and I wouldn't want to run into him in a black dark alley. But he's a good guy. He's got his head on straight. Just don't mess with him.
Special shout out to my buddy Piers Austin. He runs a very similar show from Australia. Guys, make sure you check that out. If you're not following Multi-Continental Wrestling Alliance, make sure you give them a follow. Great content, great wrestling. But Tim, we were kind of talking at the show, and you kind of gave me permission to talk about certain things, and I don't want to dive right into that, but I do want to talk about your initial, like when you became a fan of wrestling, because from getting to talk to you, you are second generation, but you didn't have the traditional second generation upbringing like everyone else has. So when did you really fall in love with pro wrestling and decide that that's what you were going to pursue?
As it came in stages. When I was a young kid, I was a huge wrestling fan. I grew up in New Jersey, so I watched the WWF back in the day, and I got really into the Monday Night Wars. I was a big Kevin Nash and Scott Hall fan. So when they went to Atlanta,
who wasn't? The NWO.
Yeah, I know, right? So I started watching Nitro right there at the end, and it was weird because I would see my father on TV, but my mother and him were not together. They hadn't been together since I was like 3 years old. So she hated wrestling. She hated him. She didn't want me to watch it. She didn't want me to talk about it. She didn't want to hear it on the TV. So I eventually would find ways to watch wrestling in secret because I loved it. And me and my friends would play out matches, and I was a big Jeff Hardy fan as a kid, so I'd be doing swantons off friends' couches onto their floors and things, and I loved it then. But then after high school, I moved in with my father, and shortly after that, WCW folded, and I saw, how do I put it? I saw what it put our whole family through, and I saw how much stress it was causing. And I thought to myself, I don't want anything to do with the wrestling business. I also had not a good relationship with my father at that time, where I didn't want to be anything like him. I didn't want to do anything he did. And so I went into acting. I did horse riding. I did writing. I managed hotels. I was in the Navy. I did all these different things.
Thank you for your service. I was in the Army.
Oh, I was a gunner's mate. Yeah, I did nothing. I sat on a boat and trained Marines how to use weapons. It was pretty easy. And they didn't like us anyway. But so I didn't want to do anything he did, though. And then, ironically enough, I was a GM of a hotel in Seattle, Washington, and I was watching Raw one night. And I hate to name drop Raw because it sounds kind of silly, but I was watching Raw because they had announced there was a big guest host coming back, and I was like, I wonder who it is. And it was when The Rock came back, and I don't know what part of me, what deep buried 17 or 16-year-old that was a huge Rock fan and a huge Stone Cold fan, huge Hall and Nash fan, all those guys. What part of me was like, something awoke, and it was like, why didn't I ever become a wrestler? Why didn't I ever wrestle? Because I'm athletic and I like to entertain. I'm obnoxious. I'm dramatic, and so it just makes sense.
No, not you.
Yeah, I know, right? No, not a professional wrestler being dramatic. So I went to a wrestling school, and I thought, let me try it. And it was a guy named Buddy Wayne. Buddy Wayne, I believe he passed away a couple years ago. I was up in Seattle, Washington. He's a really good guy. And he had a little garage and a ring in it. And I went in and I just rolled around a little bit, took a few bumps, and I was like, I am addicted. And that was 2009, 2010. And so I moved to Orlando the next year when my lease was up, and I became a wrestler. And the first time I did a live show was like the third time I fell in love with wrestling, because I was like, oh, okay. And now you have a crowd yelling and screaming, and they want your blood, or they want you to get the other guy's blood. And I just kept falling in love over and over again. And now I'm married to it now at this point. So I don't love it anymore. I'm just stuck with it.
Well, you kind of gave us a lot with that answer, and that's what I love about these interviews. I love interviewing people. I hate getting caught up on the term interview because it's such a taboo word. We're just two guys having a conversation, so I really want to dive into a lot of what you said there, and the fact that growing up with your mother, your father was an absent father, and we were kind of talking at the show, and I told you that I was raised in a very similar situation. I mean, my father wasn't on TV, but I had a very absent father, and it caused me to resent him in a way. And then you started telling me, I was like, hold on, stop, because I want to have my genuine reaction to these stories on the show. So growing up, loving pro wrestling, wanting to watch pro wrestling, and then your mother not wanting it anywhere in the household, did that ever cause any friction between you and your mother, or did she kind of understand?
No, she hated it. I had a special volume on the TV. I had an old school TV in my room, and it had a slide for the volume. And so I had figured out a specific setting on the slide where she couldn't hear it from her room or the living room. And I knew that, so she'd come by my door, and I'd hear her walk by and stop and be like, what are you doing in there? Because you're just checking on your teenage son. And I'm like, nothing. She's like, I can't hear anything. I'm like, I'm reading. She goes, you're not reading. And I'd always be watching wrestling or playing games, or I'd play wrestling video games like Revenge and all those things. And it caused major friction because she made my dad seem like the worst human being on earth, which I later found out wasn't true. It was, she had said he did all these things, and it gave me reasons to resent him, but I later found out those were mostly false. And so it was hectic and it was tough, and I think it drove a wedge between us, me and my dad, for a long time. And it's probably what caused me to start wrestling later, is because I was like, I wanted to go out and do my own things and prove I could be my own person, but also wasn't so sure about who he was, and never wanted to wrestle just to stick it to anybody. So I didn't ever want to do it just to outdo him in it or anything. But where we're at now with it is that my mother did pass away in 2007, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay. If she saw me wrestling now, I think she would be happy. But if you put her and my dad at the same show, it would not be pretty. So
the match would be going on in the crowd and not in the ring.
Yeah, they would be cutting promos on each other that are far better than anything any entertainer is going to do or any wrestler is going to do. So, but it caused major friction. But it was a fun game. Because I'd be like, well, I'm going to watch wrestling anyway. What are you doing? I'm not watching the Royal Rumble, but I was watching the Rumble.
As a parent, I have 4 boys, and you say that your mom would say that she can't hear anything. And as a parent, I can tell you from experience, the sound of chaos is almost heartwarming because they're playing, they're having fun. When it's dead silent in the house, that's when you worry. As a parent, that's the sound of absolute terror, is when it's quiet, because they're up to something. But you said you moved in with your father after high school, and I kind of told you, when I was 2 or 3, I lost all touch with my father, and I didn't speak to him. I didn't see him again until I was right at 20 years old, just before I joined the military. So it was very hard for me to repair that relationship with my father, or even try to figure out where to start. I knew I had 2 brothers on my father's side that I'd never really had the chance to meet, and I really wanted to. So that was kind of my platform on starting to rebuild the relationship with my father. How did you go about rebuilding the relationship with your father to what you have now? Because it's very hard to go from resenting somebody to living with someone. Can you kind of talk to us about that transition and how you guys rebuilt your relationship?
Yeah, it was a lot of time on the road, because when I started wrestling, one of the very early things that was safe for me to do, because wrestling, no matter how good or talented you might be, it takes a while to really know what you're doing and to be good enough for a crowd for a crowd, to have to pay to see you. And so to be protected, one of the things I did was tag with my dad a few times, about 5 or 6 times. And we would hop in a car together and drive somewhere and listen to Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones, and
Very
I'd talk to
nice.
them. Yeah, I'd talk to them about wrestling and stuff. And it opened up my eyes, because when I fell in love with doing it, I realized that when you love to do something and it's your passion, it's all you've ever wanted to do, it things don't get in the way, but those things in your life kind of have to understand. And so what repaired us was that realizing that when I would go out on the road by myself, I could totally understand how what would be awesome is it's okay to have a family and be someone who works on the road. What was always in my head, though, was that he didn't care. What I later found out, again, like I said, that wasn't true. That was my mom kind of working her angle with me to kind of keep me closer to her. And so that's what was tough, was just like getting to the point where it's like, you love your parents. I don't pick one. My mom and dad are great. And so I just want to like care for them, but like, not knowing why would you leave your kid, or how could you leave your kid, or why would you leave, New Jersey, where you were working for Vince McMahon Sr. at that time, and then go to like Atlanta and out west. And what would cause you to do those things? And then understanding why the wrestling business, what was it about the wrestling business? And then the whole time was realizing that I want to see myself in it. I'm not in this. I'm not doing this. I'm not getting all these bumps and gaining 20 pounds and working out and training and all this stuff so that I can just understand my father better. I'm doing it because I want to make money in it as well. And I want to be able to have it, feed a home, and, build a house and all that stuff one day. And so while I'm taking it serious in that aspect, it was also pretty eye-opening to understand him better and to understand how wrestling, I imagine it's a lot like being a professional athlete when you're, when your days are ending and like, you're going to retire from the NFL or Major League Baseball one day, is that it is hard to let go, because I still have 10, maybe 15 years of doing it. But I can realize how one day it'll be hard to walk away from. And while you're doing it, it is such a great feeling. It is such a high and a rush, and it's so electric that it can almost be addictive, like cigarettes or something.
It's a drug like anything else.
Exactly. And so understanding that now makes it easier. And so me and my dad now have gotten so close where 10 years ago I couldn't joke with him about these things, but now I can joke with him like, man, aren't you? And I say, man, I'm so lucky I don't have kids, so I can do this. And he laughs, because he's like, he has 4 sons, so he's been busy. But yeah, it was we would just drive and talk, and I would understand him better, and then I would understand why wrestling is such an amazing thing to do, and why it's really one of the greatest live events in the world, because it's year round. There's no off season, and it's live, and like you said, there's no feeling like it. It's just you're on a drug, and you are just like, and you want to share that with the crowd and let them feel it too, because that's the best thing, is when people in the crowd feel the same way as the guy in the ring, and everybody's excited. And my dad and me, he made it a point to teach me about all those little nuances, and that helped me understand him better and putting it in real world terms, because when he would teach me how to connect the people to our experience, and then I could see things through his eyes better in the back of my mind, I then all of a sudden understood somebody who is like half of me, but I didn't know. So
yeah,
mostly professional wrestling, people say it can be bad for families or bad for father and son relationships. For mine, it was a very yin and yang experience, dark at first and light later on.
I got you. Now, I want to I want to draw attention to some of these comments before we go on, and I don't want to harp on yours and your father's relationship too much, because you have a massive story to tell yourself. I do have one other question on this topic, and then we're going to move on. But before I do, we have comments coming in. One from my buddy Raul says, "Good afternoon, Kevin and Ripper. Wish you nothing but success on your wrestling journey and in life, bro." Another one of my admins who helps me run the social media platforms, just listening to you tell these stories, says he's getting emotional.
Oh,
and then we
geez,
just
oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
We just have a lot of people sending the Twitch emotes, basically like emojis for when you text and stuff like that. Willie
Very
Finesse, TikTok's favorite independent wrestler, joining us.
What's
Another
up,
one of
Willie?
my admin. Willie, thanks for
cool.
joining the chat. Willie's going to make his way down to Florida very soon.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, come by 2.0.
Oh, I'm going to take him to see everything. We're going to make a weekend out of it.
Very cool.
But so my final question on this topic between you and your father, because I felt the same exact thing growing up without my father. But I'm sure you felt it on a much bigger level with your father being on TV. Whenever I would see like a child playing with their dad, like playing catch or going to a ball game, that shit tore me apart, man. And like, it was never about, oh, my dad's not here to buy me an Xbox. My dad's not here to buy me a bike. It's that my dad wasn't there to spend the time with me. Did you ever watch TV and see your father on there and much like myself wonder why? Because my father had another family, and I would often think to myself, why are they good enough, but I'm not? Did you ever get that feeling?
There was probably some self-doubt for sure, as any teenager would face or fight. But it was weird. It actually probably made me a very good worker, because I am not one to, even if I'm having a terrible day or even if someone gets one over on me, and I don't like that. I'm not one of those people. I don't like when someone gets one over on me. I don't like having that hang over my head, but I push forward. I always have. I like being a tough cookie. I like thinking that I'm a survivor. If there was an apocalypse, I would be one of those dudes with the beard and the glasses and the backpack and the dog, just walking on the highway like, all right, well, it's Tuesday. And just going through it. So as a kid, it was weird because it sucked, because I would see my dad on TV and I know he's making good money and he's on TV. And I know my mom had told me he's remarried to Vern Gagne's daughter and had a couple kids that are my brothers that I still haven't met at this point in my life. So it was like, this is BS. What the, why am I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mom, and she is on pills and is a narcotics dealer and is kind of violent, and she's Sicilian, so she's like crazy. And my dad's on TV living in the suburbs in Atlanta. What the heck? What is going on? Like, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. But like I said, being an Italian from New York, I don't know, I was taught to like take it, put it on your chin, sparkle up your suit, and just move on, because the world is going to throw crap at you and you just deflect it and just keep going. And so I would go to school and kids would be like, hey, I was watching Nitro, and do you know who's going to win on Starrcade or something? Or do you know who's going to win World War III? Or like, oh, your dad's fighting Scott Hall at Starrcade. And inside, I would be pissed. I would be like, yeah, he is. He's doing all this exciting stuff. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in New Jersey with my mom, and I got to sneak wrestling on the TV. I really don't want to hear about it, but trying to save face, being my own man, I would be in my high school or something, and I would be like, oh yeah, and I would pretend, I would work my classmates. I would say, oh yeah, well, what I didn't want to ask, but what he told me was this, but like I didn't ask because I don't want to be surprised, but what I think he means is this is going to happen, because it would then make the kids in school be nicer to me, because kids are stupid, and kids would, like one day they don't like you, but then like, oh, his dad's a guy on Nitro. Oh, you want to come over and eat pizza? Like it was just stupid stuff. But then I would go to the good parties with the hot girls. So
hell yeah.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Hey, you got to play the cards you're dealt, Tim. You got to play the cards you're dealt, and I remember back in 4th grade. Now you have a very recognizable last name, so it's very easy for people to connect the two. I remember when I was in 4th grade, my name's Kevin, and I told people that I was related to Kevin Nash because I thought first names mattered and not last names, and I got called out for being a liar almost instantly. Hey man, you got to play the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, you do.
So I want to take a second to really congratulate you, because there's something you slipped in there, just a little bit of information, and I don't want to harp on it because I don't want to speak ill of the dead. I don't want to bring up any bad memories, but absent father, narcotic dealing mother, and you are your own man. You did not become a victim of the stereotype in which you were placed in. So
Yeah,
congratulations on that, man.
thank you.
I joined the military, and the two biggest things in my family are the military and federal prison. I've had family in prison, I've had family in the military, and it's one or the other for everybody in my family. So I know it's not a hard, or it's not an easy road to take. It's not easy to keep trucking forward and keep trying to keep your head up. So I commend you for that, man, and congratulations. But so getting away from all of that and getting into you, you talk about growing up in New Jersey, but then you talk about being in Seattle, and now you're in Florida. What brought you to Seattle to begin with?
Money. I before I started wrestling, I was running hotels as a general manager. I ran a hotel in New Orleans for like 7 months during
I
Mardi
bet you
Gras.
got some stories.
Yeah, yeah. A blonde, and then a blonde, and then a redhead, and then a redhead, and then back to back to back to back.
Yeah,
And
you do.
my coworkers being like, it's really weird seeing women leave your room every morning. I'm like, that's not what I do. It was a hostel, and it was just European and Latin people from all over the world backpacking, and it was really amazing. But I lived in New Orleans, and I got a better job offer in Seattle to run a more professional style hotel than a hostel. And I was really tired of New Orleans because New Orleans is amazing and fun, but I was partying a lot, and it was really fun. And I had a job. I held my life together, but it was in New Orleans. You could literally order a drink and just wander the streets. I had never experienced that anywhere. People say Vegas is like that. Yeah, you can just get a bottle.
That.
Yeah, you just order a margarita on one end of bourbon and one of those 45-ounce margaritas, and then just walk to the other end with it, and then get one on the way back. But it's a hurricane this time. And so I was having way too much fun. And then eventually met somebody, talked to somebody, got a job offer, took it, and then moved to Seattle. But I've lived all over the country. I've been Seattle, Los Angeles, Montana, Minnesota. I recommend everybody do that. If you can get away, at some point, get away. Like, just go on, put stuff in your car and drive. If you're a wrestler, just live out of your car for a summer and drive everywhere and work. And if you're somebody trying to figure out what to do with your life, just pack it all up and go on a road trip. That's what I'd recommend. There's so much cool stuff to see out there. But yeah, that's my adventure was just money, and job, and career. Trying to
drifter, man.
A drifter. Yeah. I was definitely. I used to be a drifter. It was so much fun. I had no ties to anything. In the last 12 years of my life, so I started wrestling. Now I'm always tied to something. I have no time to drift anymore. So maybe one day.
I got you. We got another comment coming in from Tyler Peck. The guy who said he was getting emotional. He says, just hearing you working with your dad and being on the road, etc., reminds me of coaching with my dad. Tyler's a coach at one of our middle schools down here. Being a coach with his dad passed away in 2018.
Yeah, it's a cool way to get close to people. Sports. It's funny because your father. I think a father and son typically aren't as emotionally bonded as, say, a mother and a child, because a woman is typically more in tune with their emotions, and their child, daughter, and the dad is typically the father. So, but when you really spend time with somebody's passion and interest around them, like he did with his father coaching, or with my dad doing wrestling, you really start to get to those deeper parts of a person. I'm sorry for his father passing away, but yeah, everybody passes on. It's just weird. We just have to learn how to deal with that. My mom, when I found out she passed away, I didn't know how to take it at first, because it hit me pretty hard. But I remember, like, it didn't hit me for like 3 days. It was like the 3 days later I was driving and I broke down crying. I was like, all right. So I had to like pull over, but that was it. So yeah, death and life is it's a wild ride.
So I could not agree more. I want to talk about what brought you to Florida, but just before I do, we have a comment coming in from a good friend of mine. We call him Wrestling Pops. He's a 40-year wrestling fan. Cool. He has forgotten more about wrestling than I'll ever remember, or than I'll ever know. The man's that good. But he says, I seen your match in OSCW with Pillman, and I have often sat here and seen great young talented guys like yourself either be kept down because of their famous dads. Has the name you feel has helped you hindered, or so has your name helped you or harmed you in your journey of wrestling?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. I don't believe any factor beyond a person's will and determination to succeed is a help or hindrance. It doesn't matter if your dad is Bob Orton and you're Randy Orton. It doesn't matter if your dad was Mr. Cena and you're John Cena. One's father was a wrestler, one's wasn't. Both men have conquered the business and made tons of money and are two of the biggest stars of all time. It has nothing to do with your father or your mother or your connections. I love Brian Pillman Jr. He is awesome, but he's another guy who his father, if it never been for wrestling, Brian would still succeed. And I think it's a double-edged sword because people expect you to be really good. They like go, well, your dad was really good, or say if you're female, your mother was a great wrestler, so you have to be good, you know. And there's very little room for like gray area or time to learn, so you have to be really careful. And I definitely think some people, the double-edged sword is that, yeah, I've been in places that are way above my pay grade. I've been in rooms, I've met people, I've been in situations that are way above my pay grade. But it's normal. I've also found out people have canceled me off shows or kind of talked bad about me to people who have never met me, who have never interacted with me. But just because I'm another second generation or third or whatever generation wrestler to them, who they feel will get more of a spotlight than them, even though they're working harder. And that's,
I like the air quotes.
It's silly. It does not.
No, I agree.
My dad's not the one taking bumps. My dad isn't lacing boots and doing all this. My dad isn't the one on a diet every day of the week to look great. And so when people say, "Oh, you're going to hold me back because you're this," or that's just self-pity, that's self-doubt, that's self-whininess. I believe that no one in professional wrestling has ever held me down because they don't like me. The only thing that's ever prevented me or anyone in it is yourself, because it is a independent business. Even if you have a job with a big company and you're on a contract, 99% of those guys are independent contractors from every company. And even in my goal, where I would love to have a job with a big company, but I would rather run my own thing. I'd rather have my own school, run my own shows, make my own money, do my own product, so no one can tell me what to do. And I have confidence and belief in my ability and knowledge of wrestling and entertainment after being around it for 30 plus years, that, yeah, getting a job with a big company is a great thing and I'm working towards it. But if I don't, you know, I think the business side of this is important. And will my name help there? Yeah, absolutely. It would be a help. So there is advantages to it there. But is there a random guy in Oklahoma who hates me and does his best to keep me off his local show? Yeah, because I'm second generation and he just goes, I don't know, that guy's competition. I like competition. If you think you're a better wrestler than me, email me and let's wrestle, because you'll make me better.
Let's go.
Yeah, you'll make me better, I'll make you better, and we can make some money. I think a lot of people forget that this is a business.
That's the thing I don't get, man. Iron sharpens iron. You don't get any better by wrestling people that are, and I hate to say anybody's below anybody, but if you're wrestling someone who's not at your skill level or can't challenge you or can't push you, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're just a big fish in a little pond. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, or the fitness level is a big thing. I train at Pro Wrestling 2.0. I work out 3 to 4 times a week. And then I go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, and I try to wrestle as much as I can. But right now it's like hopefully 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 times a week, depending on what's going on. And it's every day, and fitness is every day. And then you get in the ring with guys who are just doing it for fun. And they have really stupid looking trunks or tights or bodysuit, and their bodies aren't impressive. They're not athletic. They don't wrestle or train all the time. And so not only do you bring somebody down who does, but then you bring down the show for the people who then, if I pay money to see a show and I see some guy who looks like he just served me a Subway sandwich, and nothing against Subway artists, but I'm talking about the fact that if there's a professional wrestler, professional wrestler should look like a professional wrestler. For instance, like, yeah, I'm only 5'11", 5'10" and a half to be real, but 205 pounds. Well, with boots, I get about 6'1".
I was about to say, you look bigger than that in the ring.
Well, thank you. Well, no, because I got long arms. I have an exceptionally long wingspan. That's a medical fact. Mm-hmm. But no, because I work out. I'm like 3% body fat, you know, and I train every day. So I have muscles, and it's like just treat the business professionally, because if you don't make it for the people to want to come back, why are they going to come back? You know, and it's just, I could go on that for an hour and a half. All these guys, and the guys that wrestle in like sneakers, and they wear shorts, and they wear like a tank top, and you're like, no,
Not
get out of
everybody
the
can be.
ring.
And I kind of told you this, and this is a lesson I learned very, very fast. We were kind of talking about this when I was 15. I started training wrestling here in Georgia, and I was that guy. I came out in a hoodie, a pair of jeans, and some tennis shoes.
But you were
and
15. That's okay.
Yeah, but the first thing so the guys who trained me were the Texas Outlaws, not the ones from WCW, the ones from Velocity.
Okay.
The first thing Johnny told me when I walked back through the curtain, he was like, not everybody can be Jeff Hardy. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't do a single flip. He's like, get some trunks, at least get some boots.
Yeah.
If you want to be taken seriously, like that look works for certain people. You're not that certain people. It was the best advice ever.
Yeah. No, hey, the look is the look. Like, God rest his soul, Brody Lee. He had his look that he got famous for before he was signed, you know, wrestling in the long jeans and the dirty tank top. So it's you don't have to look like, you know, no, you don't have to dress like Kurt Angle or The Rock or anybody. You can look like you're an individual, but you know what I'm talking about.
No, absolutely.
The trash baggers. Because Raven, for instance, Raven's gimmick, you know, jean shorts, dirty sneakers.
Balls Mahoney.
Yeah, Balls Mahoney, Spike Dudley, you know, the Dudleys. You don't need it to look like, look at Andrade. You know, he doesn't wear traditional wrestling gear. You don't need to wear traditional wrestling gear. That's what it is.
Like you said, man, we could literally talk about this for the next hour and barely scratch the surface. But I do want to get into your career and everything like that. So why Florida? Out of it, there's wrestling everywhere. There's wrestling in California. You come from one of the wrestling capitals in America, New Jersey. A lot of good wrestling there. Why Florida?
Florida is the mecca of pro wrestling these days. But also, when I first started training down here about 10 years ago, it was where my dad was, and he told me to go to AFA, the Wild Samoan, who had a school here. And
Great
so, WXW out of Mineola. And so I went and worked out with him, and Scott Hall and my dad helped me, and worked out with Cody Hall, Scott's kid, for a while when he first started. And Florida was it was the mecca. And then when I was trained and was working, then getting out and traveling, Florida was a hub. It's got an international airport. The weather is great, and for a wrestler, your body gets abnormally sore, and weird injuries and ailments will pop up a day or two after a match or something, and you don't even know where. So the warm weather of Florida, it helps your body. It helps it like calm down and stay loose instead of getting frigid and cold and becoming tougher. So it's a nice place, but honestly, like where I'm at now is like, it's a nice place to live. But yeah, I do want to travel more. I would love to be on the road for the next 2-3 years if I could, just getting all over the place. But Florida is the mecca, and it's hard to go wrong. It's hard to beat Florida. You know, it's great weather, tons of stuff to do. New Jersey, my buddies up there, that weather in New Jersey? No. New York,
sketchy.
No. Seattle sucked weather-wise. Like, no. Florida's it's great. I can wear shorts like almost year round. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, man. I'm just over the line into Georgia. Like as soon as you leave Florida and come into Georgia, you're not far from my backyard. And I feel the same way you do, man. But I want to talk to Tim, the wrestling fan, and let the Living Legacy just take a time out for a second, because you said growing up you were a massive fan of Nash and Scott Hall, and now going to the school, you got to work out with Scott Hall and Scott Hall's boys, stuff like that. As a fan, what is that experience like? You know, you grow up idolizing and being a fan of this guy, and now he's here teaching you how to wrestle. And what's that experience like as a fan, man?
It's funny because I'm like thinking of like other stories that are like personal. I'm like, well, but it was really cool because the first time I talked to them on the phone, my dad was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, my son's coming next week," and I'm like, "Oh, who's that?" And he goes, "Oh, Scott Hall's here," and I hear Scott go, "Let me say hi to him." And so I'm like, I get on my phone, and he's like, "Hey, this is Scott. It's good to talk to you." And I was cool because like in my head, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, "It's Razor Ramon." I was like, "It's the bad guy. What the, Chico? What the heck?" And so it was really cool.
Hey yo.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then meeting all those guys, and just when you talk to them, because their perspective on the wrestling business is very interesting, and they really did carve out what they wanted, that whole clique group for a good chunk of the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s. And so it's really fascinating to get their point of view, and they help actually bring me down to earth, because like hitting the ground running, and the first people you run into are like the Outsiders and Sean Waltman and those guys, and then all of a sudden they're just your dad's friends and coworkers who they respect him immensely, but you still have to earn their respect, but they are not, they know him, so they just treat you like a human being, and they talk to you about things like a human being, and they really quickly kind of brings you down to earth, because you're like, wow, like, okay, if I am involved in this now, and now I can either take this serious and it can go somewhere, or I better just go out the back door real quick and get out of here before anything goes too wrong. And so I just kept going forward, and it was great. I think a couple years ago I went to WrestleMania, and not a couple, it was about 5 years ago, and I saw Kevin and Scott and Sean Waltman in the back, and asked if I could get a photo with the guys, because I was like, we never took a photo together, but I was being kind of a fan. And they were like, sure. And it was like, they were like, yeah, absolutely. And we're like in the backstage. So yeah, it was cool, because when I was a kid, I would watch these guys and idolize them, act like them. And then fast forward years later, through some hard work and sacrifice, and trying something new, I'm like at WrestleMania, hanging out, taking photos, sitting down with them, watching TV. Like, and it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. And then there's personal stories where it's like they are your heroes and idols, but they say never meet your heroes, and it's funny because they're just like regular people. Like Dave Grohl said about his daughter one time. He's like, my daughter doesn't give a shit that I'm in the Foo Fighters. She just wants a smoothie. And she's like, I want my smoothie now. I don't care what band you're in. And that's how it is with like, being around like, a famous wrestler who like all of a sudden he like needs a ride to the airport, and you're busy, and you're like, oh man, do I just ignore this phone call right now? Like, I've never, you never would see yourself in that position like a year earlier, but like a year later, I'm like, I don't want to pick you up today. So it's just real life comes crashing down real hard.
Yeah, man, you just gotta come crashing down, and Hogan's music automatically hits in my head every time someone says crashing down. It just
I will listen to that song for fun. So that's the kind of weirdo I am.
Oh, dude, it's a great song in the gym, isn't it?
Dude, it's so inspiring. Like I could lift up a truck. If I saw like an old lady underneath an 18-wheeler, I could just flip that bitch up. Just be like, I was listening to Real American, ma'am. Live. I can give her CPR just by like looking at her. I'm like, I was listening to Real American. Get out of here. Get out of here. Like
just the stare from listening to Real American. You are healed. Goodbye.
Do you hear it, lady?
Tim, I'm having a great time, man.
What is that thing? Is it cardiac arrest when they do the thing on your chest? What is that?
No, cardiac arrest is a heart attack. You're talking about the chest compressions.
Okay, but is that what they give you if you're having one or something? Like, what is that called? The chest compressions? Does that have a name?
They're called chest compression. Oh, CPR?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. You could perform CPR with that song just playing in your head, like just tackling people, being like, "You look fine, but you need this." Just that wouldn't work in 2021. My God, you would get arrested. Man assaults 72 people today. White
you
man.
Look at somebody and say you need this, you're going to jail, Tim.
You need this. I found a large, gruff human. It's fine.
Oh my God, Tim. We kind of talked about you being a drifter and being a wanderer and going all over the U.S. Where's some of your favorite places that you've been?
I would recommend everybody visits New Orleans. It is such a cool city, such cool people. Locals are awesome. Music scene is fantastic.
Sneak attack CPR.
Yeah, just you need this. You look like you're breathing heavy.
Somebody. You look like you're choking.
Yeah, just shove a donut in their mouth and be like, I was practicing this.
And he also says CPR out of nowhere.
I'm not dead. I'm happy.
So anyway, you recommend people visit New Orleans? And
New Orleans, you got to see New
continue.
Orleans. Visit New Orleans. There's a place called Crystal River in north of Tampa here in Florida where you can swim in the river with manatees, and it's a freshwater river. So there's no sharks, there's no saltwater crocs. They keep gators out. It's monitored land, but you can literally just park your car, rent a kayak or something for like $30, kayak to this little area where there's a spring called Three Sisters Springs and just kayak. I used to live in Bozeman, Montana, and I used to snowboard and hike mountains up there. And I would recommend everybody visits the mountains because there's nothing like being like 10,000 feet up in the air. That air is so clear and you breathe so good. And there's something about being that far away from city life that is really nice. So I'd recommend Bozeman, New Orleans if you just want to party. Crystal River is like this magical place with like a spring. You expect there to be like fairies and elves in the trees and stuff, and it's really cool. And it's all right here in the United States. The United States is a pretty awesome country. It's got a lot of cool things to do. And I don't know, just visit, man. Just travel. Like I said before, you got to get out there and travel. The world is too big. You got to see
absolutely, man. And another avid viewer of the show, the Dad Trainer, says your new finisher is going to be the CPR. Tim, I'm going to be there at the next Riot show, and so help me God, if you're in the middle of that ring giving somebody CPR, I'm going to lose my mind in the crowd.
Right. This is someone's career. Just poof, poof, poof. That's funny. I'm giving the wrestling business CPR. Actually, that could be kind of fun. That'd be a fun way to cheat. Excuse me, I don't mean cheat. I mean competitively take advantage and win in a match.
Come on, Tim, you're a heel. You meant cheat.
If I knock, I'm just saying, say I knock somebody out with my fist, because obviously there's no loaded brass knuckles, but I'm just so strong. But if I knock somebody out and the ref turns around, obviously if I give him CPR, then I've done nothing wrong because I'm trying to help.
No,
Brilliant.
The good cancels out the bad.
CPR out of nowhere.
That's a t-shirt, Tim. That's a t-shirt.
Wrestling could use that these days. Like, shoot, I watch wrestling a lot. I watch AEW, WWE. I watch Ring of Honor. I have friends that work for all of the companies. And they're some amazing people, amazing, amazing fighters, and they're so athletically gifted. But I watch wrestling, and I don't see anything that tells me I can't do it on TV these days. And maybe CPR out of nowhere would be good, because sometimes I watch wrestling these days and I'm thinking it's just so safe, and it's so careful, and it's so corporate, and I don't know. That's why I want to start my own wrestling company. Just have 80s Mid-South all over again, just barbed wire death matches and some guy's front yard. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, man.
I'm just kind of kidding, but yeah, no, the wrestling business today, man. I mean, it's doing really well, and obviously it's pandemic season, so we're getting past that. And I feel like once wrestling and everything else opens back up for full, I think it'll be really a nice hot time. But I love AEW and I love WWE and I love Ring of Honor as far as like the major, and NWA is also back now too. And there's so much exciting stuff going on, but I don't know. There's the creative stuff about it is just. I think that's why one day you'll be as liable to see me start my own wrestling company as sign on anybody else's, because I trust myself a whole lot more than them.
Oh, I'm telling you, man. You start your own company, I'm there. You start your own school, I'm gonna be there at every show. I'm really good friends with Zach, and I go to, and that's why I was at the Riot shows. I'm really good friends with Zach. I was in town the night before, and he said, "Hey, man, come check out Riot." And I'm so glad we stayed and checked it out, because, like I said, man, that show was absolutely awesome.
It was fun.
Up to this point, you've done a lot of stuff in pro wrestling. Have you ever found yourself in the ring with somebody where you're standing there in the ring and you're in almost like, I don't want to say starstruck, but you couldn't believe you were placed in the position you were in, or it was surreal to you? Have you ever had that moment?
In good and bad. Yeah, I've had.
Let's hear them both.
Let's start with the bad.
You found yourself staring down New Jack, didn't you?
No, one time in a bathroom, yeah. I I went into a bathroom at a show and I'm taking a piss, and then he comes and stands next to me and he starts taking a piss. And I'm like, well, don't look at him funny. And and so I just kept peeing. And I thought he mumbled something. I didn't know if he mumbled it to me. So I was like, I wasn't looking, but I was like, what? And he goes, are you Tim? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, okay. I thought I met you earlier. And I was like, all right. All right, bye. And that was my interaction with New Jack. He was super nice to me when I met Mr. New Jack. I met him in the back and the front. He was very cool. But
I actually run another podcast called Wrestling with Tragedy. It's almost like Dark Side of the Ring. The big sign behind me, you might recognize this bald-headed guy in the middle. That's Angel Medina from the Baldies. He's one of my co-hosts on the show, and he's always got cool, fun stories to tell about New Jack. But you were saying you had good and bad stories for moments in the ring.
Yeah. I've been in the ring with guys where like they show up to the show and they're like one of those backyarders I was talking about, that the promoter's like, yeah, you're working with this guy and he just got off his shift at 7-Eleven and he's gonna wear this. He's got non-slip shoes, so he's gonna wear those in the match as well. And he just takes off his 7-Eleven polo and he puts on a Rangers jersey and has a hockey mask, and he
still smells like rotisserie hot dogs and slushies.
Yeah, he's called the goalie of doom, and you'll be going 20 minutes. It's like, you got to be kidding! Like, oh my god,
how did I get here?
Like, this is somebody give me a job, like, please. So no, and then the good part, I've read. Oh shoot! Come to think of it, actually, okay, this was trippy. The trippiest one. I've never been starstruck, to be honest with you. I've been in the ring with a lot of names, but never been starstruck. But the trippiest thing was one day I was wrestling Cody Hall. We did a ladder match at a show in Georgia for the Superstars of Wrestling inaugural title. And this was back in like 2016, and we had a really good ladder match. But as we were doing entrances, and we're in the ring, and we're sizing each other up, and Cody's a big boy. He's like 6'8". So I'm like really taking my time trying to measure this monster out. And like around the ring, there's my dad and Scott Hudson are doing commentary. And I'm wrestling Cody Hall in a ladder match. And then like Luke Gallows was over there watching. And then like Jim Cornette was over there watching. And then there was Scott was over there. And I'm just like, this is weird. Like they're all watching, and then we, not to toot our own horns, but we killed it. Like we had a good ladder match. I remember asking Jim Cornette for help in the back. Jim Cornette, and if I didn't know Mr. Cornette at that point very well, I really don't now either. But I listen to his podcast then. I listen to it all the time now, and I think he's hilarious.
I love the drive-through.
I think he's misunderstood. Yeah, he's ridiculously misunderstood, and so anyway, he was in the back and I was back there and I was grasping at straws because I didn't know how to approach this match. I'd never been in a ladder match. My dad never did a ladder match. And I out of the corner of my eye, I see Jim Cornette. And I'm like, well, if anyone's going to know what to do in a wrestling situation, he's going to know. He's been everywhere. He discovered Sensational Sherry. This guy knows what he's doing. Okay, like he's a genius. And so I look over and I'm so excited that he's right there and I can ask him that I don't think to look and see what he's doing. I just ask him. And he's halfway, he's leaning against a wall and he's got his pants halfway up and he's like in his underwear and he looks over at me and goes, what? Like, can I put my pants on? I'm literally like, sir, Mr. Cornette, I have a question. Can I ask you a question about my ladder match? And he's just like, oh, 1 second. So I got dressed and then I asked him for strategy tips basically and other thoughts. And he gave them to me. And then I went out and executed what he told me to do. And it was fantastic. And after the match, I remember Luke Gallows came up to me and he was like, hey man, that was really good. That was fun to watch. And I'm like, okay, well, that's all I needed to know. If Luke enjoyed it, it must have been pretty decent because he's been around the block. He knows what's good and bad. So it was that was very surreal.
Knows what's up.
Yeah, that was very surreal. And now it's definitely calmed down. But like I just met David Heath who is better known as Gangrel, for the very first time several months ago. And I am a vampire fan. I love mythical culture. That's a whole nother conversation. But I love werewolves and vampires and all that stuff. I think it's really exciting.
You're just a Twilight fangirl, aren't you, Tim?
No, man. That one Italian chick, though, with the huge morals and a great set of eyes. Yeah, she was fantastic in that movie. But no, I'm into all that stuff, and I used to read that as a kid. I read Bram Stoker's Dracula when I was like 9 because I'm a weirdo. My mom thought it was really weird, but I read like every page of it, and so I was always into the Brood and Edge and Christian and Gangrel, and so I got to meet Gangrel, and I kind of popped. I was like, whoa, it's Gangrel, and so he had his fangs come out, and he's just all ready to go before his match. And I was like, sir, can I have a photo with you? Like a child. Like, I've only asked for photos with a few people. Steve Austin. I met Steve Austin, and I was like, I can't deny it. That's Stone Cold. That's
no,
the GOAT.
you got to do it, man.
You got to bother Stone Cold. And I was like, it's funny. I said, Mr. Austin, good to see you. And he started laughing. He goes, I know who you are. I was like, oh, okay, because Jim Ross was next to him, and Jim knows my dad really well. They're good friends. And so he had already said, oh, that's Larry's boy, as I was walking up, I guess. So he didn't be like, who is this guy just showing up? But anyway, that was really cool to meet. And I don't know. That was my most starstruck. When I met Arnold Schwarzenegger at WrestleMania 31, he was sitting in a golf cart. Not a wrestler, I know, but he's in the Hall of Fame. And he was sitting in a golf cart, and I'm a huge Conan mark, like Conan, RoboCop. You know, not RoboCop, Terminator, Conan, Terminator, Predator. You know, Red Sonja, you name it. I was a huge Arnold fan growing up. True Lies.
Did he ever scream, "Get to the chopper"?
No, God, no. He looked so tired because, like, I grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, like Never Meet Your Heroes, because he was Arnold and he was jacked and he's pumped and he's pumping iron, Arnold, and he's killing everybody. And then I met him, and he was this old, tired man sitting in a golf cart, and he was just
got Mayor Arnold.
Yeah, he was like, hello.
Or governor.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. You know, like, and I was like, oh, it's Arnold. And like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I could probably beat up the Terminator now. You know, like, so anyway, long story short, yeah, that was my most Star Trek. But just that one day looking around and seeing all those eyes watching you, like, oh, look, there's Larry's boy. Hope he doesn't suck.
Hope he doesn't suck. What great words of motivation.
Oh, that's all wrestling business is. This is a thick-skinned business. We all make fun of each other relentlessly. Relentlessly. That's half my conversations, my group chats are just us making fun of somebody. Like, you're bald. Yeah, you're fat. You're slow. You're a loser. This continues. And we love each other. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I recently became the ring announcer and one of the commentators for Real Pro Wrestling, and I got added to that group chat, and you are not lying. Like, you could tell there's a lot of like brotherly love in there, but holy crap, you guys are I thought I was a good shit talker. You guys are relentless.
Yeah, because you have to. So you have to bring each other down, keep each other at your level, never let anyone get too far ahead of themselves, don't let anyone get a big head. It's just part of the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I was born with a big head, so there's really nothing I could do about it. But I'm gonna ask you something. I'm gonna ask you a question that might be a little tough to answer. Just depending on how you feel about it. You know, one of the things we hear as wrestling fans and people who aren't privileged to the other side of that fourth wall, we always hear people say, don't work yourself into a shoot. Have you ever found yourself where you'd worked yourself into a shoot, or where you went into a match and it quickly became more than that?
Yeah. As far as unprofessional wise, no. I have not had that moment yet where I have run into somebody who couldn't go out and compete, or it caused a sort of detriment. But I have worked myself into shoots where I have seen guys wrestle. This guy Vordell Walker, I remember Vordell is a big, strong man, and I saw him work one day, and I was like, I want to wrestle that guy. It was like when I first started. And then I met him one day, and I was like, could we wrestle a match sometime? He was like, of course. So we wrestled a match, and he hits like a ton of bricks. Like he looks like a brick shit house, and he hits like a ton of bricks though. And when I left that match and drove home that night, I felt like I had been hit by a car. And it was still to this day, it's on tape. It's on my YouTube channel, but it's me versus Bordell from St. Mary's, Georgia, and we beat the hell out of each other. And I remember driving home and just thinking to myself, I was the one that said we should do this. Like I said, I want to fight you in a wrestling ring. Why? Why? Who am I? What an idiot.
Why didn't somebody stop me?
Yeah. Well, like one guy, Frank, my buddy Frank said to me, because I wrestled Corey Chavis on a Friday and Bordell on a Saturday. And he said, well, you should just wrestle John Davis on Sunday and get it over with. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of funny. But, and then the other situation was actually kind of funny. I messaged a guy. I was just trying to get work. And a buddy of mine, I said, can I come do your show? Do you have any spots? He goes, yeah, I do. Come on in. And when I got there, he wanted to do a favor for a buddy of his who was kind of disabled. So I had to tag with a disabled kid, and it was like all in good fun. But then he had a seizure in the middle of the match.
No.
So I then had to help him carry to the back, and then we didn't have paramedics on site because it was a stupid outlaw indie show with 250 people, to support this kid's operation. And so the fastest thing to do is to just load him up in the car and drive him over.
Was the guy you were tagging with the guy that the show was for?
He was like, yeah, he had a palsy-ish kind of thing, but he could walk.
Mm-hmm.
And he could do a little bit. It was like one of those things when you see a kid run the touchdown in and everybody moves out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, he started having a seizure. And they were like, literally, like as he's on the mat, and they're like, oh, he's prone to these. And I'm like, we had a live show with a guy who's prone to seizures? Are you serious? And so then I felt bad because he was my partner. So I went to the hospital with him. And I had to help fill out paperwork. And so I'm sitting there at like 2 a.m. at a hospital with this guy. It was like 5 years ago. And I remember just sitting there waiting for him to get out. And I'm like, I asked to be on this show. I messaged him. I said, I would love to come work a show for you. And he's like, hey, will you tag and protect this disabled kid? I said, sure. I thought he meant he was like a little slow. I didn't know like he was literally like about to break down into a seizure. And so then I'm like driving to the hospital, waiting for him to get out. His family's there. Everybody's like, oh, so nice of you. I'm like, well, he's my tag partner. I don't know what else to do. It felt bad. But literally it was like 1:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm in a hospital right now. That was the only times I've worked myself. I am pretty respectful. My dad has always taught me well enough, and he is, you don't know who somebody will buy out. And so, don't mess with people. And it has guided me well. Attempt to become trainable. I'll always try to rush you. And so that's why, and they've,
a good buddy of mine.
With wrestling today, it's not trying, but tells me, Zbyszko Ripper here, the living legacy, that I cannot be on that level. I see now with that kind of feeling of confidence. He could have, was working out with a couple buddies of mine, and half of it's because they can't really visit the PC or work as much as they are. We'll see this. My goal is to just grind and get on some people's TVs, and give me an opportunity, great. And if someone doesn't, get my name and rep, and I can make enough money doing it, I don't have to worry about it needing an opportunity from somebody else. So you will just see me grind and grind and grind. I will be posting and sharing and making new content about wrestling and putting up new promos and sharing shows I'm working on and training at the school and putting my friends over and just trying to get to that, pay window, that sweet, sweet pay window of love in the sky.
Absolutely, man. And I 100% appreciate the grind. And, independent wrestlers are some of the most mentally tough people I've ever met in my entire life. Guys like you and Zach and everybody else that I've met through the independent scene, just the intestinal fortitude that you guys have to keep moving forward and never, like you said, you look at the other products and there's nobody there that makes you think, why even try? You wake up every day and you keep grinding and keep hustling. And that's why I love the independent scene. I love interviewing independent wrestlers. I love having independent wrestlers on here. Some of my favorite interviews I've ever done, to include this one, have been independent wrestlers. But another question I have for you, man, is so how long have you been involved in pro wrestling? Like from the time you debuted to now, how long has it been?
I debuted in September of no, April of 2012. And so it has been
Almost
almost
10 years.
9 years. Almost, yeah. But for 5 years, I was full time at Medieval Times because it was paying really well and it was right next to my house. And then I would say, sorry,
No, you're good.
you can hear that. I think there's somebody using the shower. And, but yeah, no, so about 9 years, but full time, if I add up the last 6 months and the first few years, about only 3-4 years full time. So, but I've been around the business about 9 years. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with 9 years, or even the last 3 or 4. One of the questions that I like to ask everybody who comes on this show is, if you can go back 9 years to when you started this journey, when you started your road into pro wrestling, and you had your debut, if you were able to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, something that would help you throughout your journey, what would that advice be?
Don't change a thing.
Short, simple, and to the point.
Don't change a thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Because I may not be a multimillionaire wrestling on TV at the moment, but I'm a happy guy, and I feel good about the things I've done because, like I said, I'm not one of those people. I never want to look at myself in the mirror and be like, well, oh, I could have done more, you know. So I will live while I'm alive, and that's just keep going. That's what I would say.
Very nice, man. And Tim, I can't thank you enough for this interview. I don't think I've laughed in an interview this much since I've started doing this. This has been an absolute delight for me.
Well, hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Before we get out of here, please let everybody know where they can find you and follow you and follow the grind of the Ripper himself.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, I made it really simple. If Instagram and Twitter are kind of the most popular social sites for basic scrolling social media. Twitch is obviously huge these days, and YouTube is huge for watching content. But Instagram and Twitter are just at Ripper Zbyszko, very simply, and it's the same thing on YouTube. Just keeping it simple, and it's the same thing on Facebook. It's super simple. It's all just Ripper Zbyszko, at Ripper Zbyszko, one word, or Facebook. Just look up Ripper Zbyszko or The Living Legacy, and that's on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And I have Facebook, and I have a LinkedIn as well. I am on LinkedIn, which is funny because it's so professional and corporate, but it's cute because the WWE and other people will share, like, today we have hired a new chief executive officer of West Coast sales. And then, like, I'll see Instagram for WWE or, like, AEW, and it'll be like, and tonight Murder Hawk will fight Desert Storm. And it cracks me up that it's like, it's just so totally different. I love it. I love the business side of wrestling. So, anywho, but yeah, any site you go to, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the big ones. And I don't have a Twitch because I game, but I game in private, and I'm not. I already want people to watch me, so I'm like, please go watch my YouTube or check out Instagram or Twitter. If Twitch would just be me gaming in frustration and like looking at the camera and being like, well, why are you here? Like there'd be no point. So those are where you can find me, all those websites. I got new content, new stuff. I retweet things. I share things. I like I said, I put my friends over. So come check it out.
Very nice. Guys, if you are a supporter of Wrestling Review Society, which is my group, if you're a supporter of twitch.tv/YoKevin, I strongly encourage you guys to go follow Ripper Zbyszko, spelled right there underneath his name or underneath his video feed, Ripper Zbyszko on all platforms.
Guns. Right next to my gun. Yeah.
Make sure you guys go follow him, give him a like, let him know that Heel Kevin sent you. It's the least we can do, man. We got to support independent wrestling. I mean, I'm in all these groups, and we always talk about how wrestling doesn't get the attention it deserves, and the only way that changes is if we, the fans, force it back into that limelight. And you do that by following these independent wrestlers and helping them become undeniable. So make sure you go follow Ripper Zbyszko on all of his platforms. Guys, it would mean the world to me. It'd mean the world to him. And, I mean, it's just the best way to get the spotlight back on pro wrestling. Guys, with that being said, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and if you hate me, you can yell at me online. I don't care. I'll yell at you back. If you love me, you can tell me you love me, and I'll be like, good, you should. So I'm there. Reach out. Say hello.
Guys, we've been talking shit to Showtime and JD all week. So I'm pretty sure we can add one more person to the mix. If you like them, great. If you hate them, great. Send that feedback. Send those comments. Support independent wrestling, guys. That's what this show is all about, is getting people that you would have never met otherwise in front of your screens and really getting their stories out there. And I'm sure as much as I sit here that this will not be the last time you see myself and Mr. Zbyszko on the screen together. But with that being said, guys, this has been this week's episode of The War Room. Make sure you tune in this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern for another pro wrestling interview. We have another good one set up. I'm not going to drop it just yet. And, of course, we have the rescheduling of the Pope, the current NWA television champion, coming up, so stay tuned for that. If you're watching on the Twitch channel, don't go anywhere. The feed's not ending. You guys are going to get some really cool Twitch-exclusive content. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, the feed will end. So go ahead and switch over to the Twitch channel. Hit that follow button and get some really cool content. Tim, once again, man, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute delight. If I can just have one more second of your time after the feed ends, I'd really, really appreciate it.
That's good.
And with that, as soon as I can find my mouse, this mouse goes to sleep on me, Tim. Like if I don't touch it for a while, it just goes away and it messes with me. I got it because it lights up and I'm ADD as hell, but it goes to sleep on me and then I can't find it and it's aggravating.
That's what my girlfriend does to me at night. Just leaves me be.
On that note, guys, like I said, if you're on Twitch, don't go anywhere. The feed's not over. I don't think I can end the show any better than Tim just did. So that being said, guys, thank you so much. Tim, I'll see you in just 1 second. Everybody else, enjoy this raid that we're going to do if you're watching on the Twitch channel. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of The War Room.
Good luck, guys.